Hey everybody, Thomas Joseph here. Now, warm melt-in-your-mouth biscuits are a classic favorite. And today, I'm gonna share with you the perfect recipe for making flaky and tender biscuits, and you won't end up with something like this, a squatty, flat, hard and crumbly biscuit. So, let's get started. To start off, I have 3 cups of all-purpose flour here, and I'm using just a regular all-purpose flour today. But if you have access to any of those really great soft wheat flours, like white lily flour, that would be a perfect thing to use for this recipe because it'll give you something that's really nice and tender in the end. So 3 cups of flour. To that, I'm gonna add a tablespoon of sugar. A little bit of sweetness in your biscuit is really, really nice. It helps to kind of offset the saltiness from the salt and also from the leavening that we're using. So 2 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder, and this is double acting baking powder. And what that means, again, guys, is that it acts in 2 different stages when you add moisture to it and also heat. So you'll have kind of a dual leavening effect. In addition to this chemical leavener, baking powder, I'm gonna add a little bit of baking soda. And this is 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. And the baking soda is gonna react at another stage when we add acid into the biscuit dough. Last but not least, a little bit of salt. I have a teaspoon of kosher salt here. Now I'm gonna whisk all these dry ingredients together. And I like to use a wire whisk here because I think it helps to evenly distribute all of that leavening and the salt with the flour. One tip, if you're making biscuits, if you're making pie crust, anything that has kind of that flaky texture that you're hoping for in the end, it's helpful to have all of your ingredients nice and icy cold. So you can even put your flour into the refrigerator. So this looks good. And now the butter. So I have 10 tablespoons of unsalted butter that's cut into, I'd say about 1/2-inch cubes. I'm gonna add this right to the flour, and today I'm making biscuits by hand, but you could certainly do this in a food processor if you wanted to. You could also use one of those pastry cutters. That really works well. Now you wanna do this quickly so that you're not melting the butter. So I'm mashing the butter up with my thumb and my fingers, trying to get some pea-sized pieces. That's what you're looking for. And it will take about 2 or 3 minutes to achieve this. All right, so this looks good. You can see there are decent sized pieces of butter in the flour mixture. And those little pieces of butter in the end are gonna melt down in the oven and they're gonna create steam, which is gonna help to leaven the biscuit. So now I'm gonna create a little bit of a well in the center of the flour mixture. And I'm gonna add some buttermilk. I have 1 cup of icy cold buttermilk that I'm using here today. Now, a lot of you ask the question, hey, I don't have access to buttermilk, or I don't really buy it, so what can I use instead? And we did a whole video on substitutes for buttermilk, so check that video out. Taking a rubber spatula, I'm gonna gently pull the dry ingredients into the buttermilk. And I'm just gonna stir this together until it's kind of crumbly and shaggy. You don't want this to be a cohesive dough at this time. So don't overwork this mixture because that's how you're gonna create a really tender biscuit by avoiding overmixing. So just stir together until it almost comes together. And now I'm going to transfer this onto a parchment-lined baking sheet. And this parchment is gonna really help me to bring this dough together and laminate the dough, which is gonna give us an extra flaky biscuit. So, using the parchment here to help you, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take the 2 sides of the parchment and kind of push them together, lightly compressing the dough. Really what you're looking to do here, guys, is to just create a cohesive mass. And then I'm going to pat the dough out into a 6 by 10-inch square. And you know, this is kind of a loose measurement here, guys. You can measure if you want to, but basically what we're doing here is we're gonna fold the dough on top of itself, creating even more layers and getting an extra flaky biscuit. So I'm gonna take this rectangle, use the parchment to help you here, and fold the dough in half. And then pat this out again into a 6 by 10-inch rectangle, roughly. So now I'm gonna fold it yet again in half. And then at this stage, I'm going to push this guy out to a 6-inch square. And I'm making square biscuits today, but you could certainly punch this out using a round cutter. That would be really great. But the benefit to cutting them into squares is that you have no waste. So this looks like a rough 6-inch square. And now I'm gonna take a little bit of bench flour. I'm just gonna flour the top slightly. And I'm gonna flour my knife. And I'm gonna cut this into 9 squares. And you can eyeball it. Now make sure your oven is preheated to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. And I think it makes sense to have the rack in the middle of the oven. We're looking for a pretty high temperature here because we want to activate all of the leaveners. So high heat, we want to activate the butter so that it melts, and again, it creates that wonderful steam that's going to give you the flaky layers to the biscuit. And I'm going to gently position the squares here about, I'm gonna give them a little bit of room to grow, so about a 1/2 inch in between. You could leave them plain like this, or if you had a little bit of buttermilk, you can brush the top for a really nice kind of golden brown crust to these biscuits. So these will take around 18 minutes, maybe 18 to 20 minutes, depending on how accurate your oven is. So right into the oven. All right, guys, so the biscuits are out of the oven and they've cooled just ever so slightly. Now you wanna make sure that you're eating these biscuits nice and warm. That really is the best way to enjoy them. Look at how tall and flaky they are, and I mean, they're just gorgeous. Now you could serve these just as they are, maybe with a little bit of butter, if you wanted something sweet, jam for a breakfast table. Now, today I'm gonna make a little egg sandwich because I think that's what a biscuit really needs. I have a fried egg, you could use scrambled eggs, a little bit of bacon, cheese, it's really whatever you like. And there you go. You only need a few ingredients to make the most delicious biscuits. Now remember all those tips and tricks. And if you have any kitchen conundrums, please reach out to us using the hashtag kitchen conundrums. We love to hear from you. And as always, enjoy, guys. And as always, guys, click like and subscribe.